Welcome to Ask an Advisor. I'm Krista DiBiase here with our Team Clark advisor, Wes Moss.
Hey, Krista. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Whenever you're listening. I hope if you're enjoying your walk, walk a little faster, pick up the pace.
There's nothing like listening to a podcast while you're
That's what I do
strolling,
every
getting
day.
in your 10,000 steps. Do you measure your steps, by the way?
Oh, yes.
How many do you get a day?
I try to get 15.
15,000?
Yes.
No wonder you're in such good shape. I use an app called Pacer.
Oh.
And it is great if you have your phone on you. And the problem is it doesn't count if you're working out, and I don't have my phone with me. So my steps look light because I'm not adding in a little bit of workout time. I rarely get in 10,000.
Okay.
The weekends I always do. It's so funny. Monday is the worst day. It's such a sedentary day. I'm just at my desk the entire day. And then it goes up little by little every single day of the week. And then it explodes because of sports on the weekends.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have 2 dogs that I try to walk 2 walks a day if I can, and the first walk's usually 3 miles, and then like their early morning walk, and then so that helps me a lot for sure.
Hey, what are we talking about today?
Well, I know you have a story you were telling me earlier that you're going to talk about first to share, a warning for all of us about financial conversations, which are so important. And then you've got you love a rule, you love a financial
I love a rule of thumb, and I have not heard a new rule of thumb for a while. Actually, we did have a new rule of thumb here. It was called the infinite time horizon, maybe a month or 2 ago, but we haven't had a new rule of thumb since.
Okay.
And this is a brand new rule of thumb. Our Clark Smart audience may not like this rule.
Oh, okay. It's called the 0.01% rule.
Yeah. There's a whole book about it. The Wall Street Journal did a whole article about it. There's a whole book about this one rule of thumb. And I think for our audience, it might get a little controversial.
Okay.
Controversial.
For sure.
But why don't we start with this? And in full disclosure, this was not what I had prepared to talk about today. We were going to talk about another article that I found in Newsweek. It was another financial article that we can maybe save for next week. But this really just comes from a financial conversation I had last night. And so it's fresh on my mind, and it made me think that I should share it with our audience because it really, unfortunately, it applies to all of us, or it will eventually apply to all of us. And let's call this almost an emergency text from a friend of mine who recently she had a parent pass away. Really unexpected, literally on vacation.
Oh gosh, that's terrible.
And it happened really quickly, and it's just obviously super sad. And so it was her father in his later 70s, in otherwise good health, but passed away. And her mom, who is a little younger, in her late 60s, was really just kind of having a crisis and not knowing what to do, not understanding what amount of money was going to come in, and the text message was, "Hey, my mom is losing her Social Security, and she's in a major anxiety loop about this, and doesn't know how she's going to be able to afford life."
Gosh, that is awful. On top of losing your husband unexpectedly.
So I got pretty quickly, was able to get in touch with her, and I initially thought maybe there was some confusion about Social Security and how that worked and why she would be losing Social Security. But ultimately, very quickly, I understood that she had a higher Social Security payment than her husband. So that if your spouse passes away and your Social Security payment is lower, then you should be able to step up to that higher amount. In this particular case, her Social Security was higher than his, but his was not insignificant. She got about $1,700 a month. He got about $1,600 a month. But now that he's gone, very suddenly, that $1,600 a month is no longer. It's gone. In fact, as she was checking on this and going through and trying to understand how much he was even getting, because she was, and really the whole story here is that she had almost no idea about anything with the finances. She didn't know her pension amount. She had to look up the amount she got in Social Security. The only reason she knew his Social Security was gone is that Social Security took it back.
Oh, no. Oh.
Insult to injury in a really tough time. So as she's going through, I guess we were on the phone, and she's logging into her computer, and she's saying, oh my goodness, Social Security just took back his payment from this month.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Ugh. So as we talk this through, I said, well, tell me about your housing situation. Well, how much is the house worth? I'm not really sure. He said it was about X amount. How much do you have left on the mortgage? I really don't know. Where would I go to figure that out? She said, I do know that we have a really low mortgage amount because they have a low rate. And the mortgage amount per month was well under $1,000, which is, good. Again, hard to find unless you have a 3% mortgage rate. But that was a good piece of news. Her Social Security was good at $1,700, a pension that was nothing, about $1,000 a month. She said, but that's it. Now that I've lost this other $1,600 a month, what am I going to do? Well, as we continue the conversation, she does have some savings. So let's call it about $250,000 in retirement accounts. And she didn't look at that account as providing income. She looked at it just as this corpus that sits there and hopefully grows. Because she's not near RMD age, she's really never had to take any money out of it. And I started to do the math, and I said, well, at $250,000, even if you use the 4% rule, or let's call it 4.5%, because she's already almost 70, that's $11,000, $12,000, almost $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So the conversation went to, well, wait a minute. If your housing cost is still low, you still have your pension and you have your Social Security. Now, maybe you can start looking at this account in a new way that you've never looked at before, that this is now an income stream for you. And that can't completely replace the lost Social Security check, but it goes a long way. Another $1,000 a month to make up for that. And all of a sudden, her anxiety went way down. And she said, wait a minute, maybe I think if I spend a little less at Costco, I'm going to be able to make this work.
Oh.
And it reminded me that here she has been in this anxiety loop since this happened. It's been a couple of weeks, and she's been paranoid and frantic for this entire period of time. So you have this terrible life event, and then you're worried if you're ever going to be able to pay your bills. And it reminds me that just the simplest conversations can really avoid that multi-week panic. Mm-hmm. If she sat down, and this is for every couple to think about, if something happened to you today on your walk, what would the exercise, how hard would it be from a financial standpoint? Life standpoint, of course, terrible. We're here talking about finances. How would your spouse be able to react to that? Would they have any clue where everything was? Would they know the different income streams coming in? If your income stream is lost, what happens to your spouse? And that can all be solved. And if you start saying to yourself, wow, my spouse I don't know. They wouldn't understand what to do. They wouldn't know how to figure this out. It might take weeks or months before they ever get any sort of clarity. But imagine going home and just having a 30-minute conversation. A 30-minute conversation. Lay out the big pieces of the equation. Hey, honey, if something happens to me, here's how much I'm getting with this source and this source. Maybe this one stays because it's a joint life, and maybe this one is gone. And just having that simple conversation can go so far. And the reason I'm giving this a low bar is that I just spoke with someone that had zero conversations about it. How is the retirement account invested? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how to log in. I think it's around $250,000. 30-minute conversation can make that really difficult time a little less difficult. Now, you take that a step further, and we start talking about financial planning, sitting down, doing that along with your spouse, and then revisiting that once or twice a year. There's a statistic I just read this morning, Krista. It was from an Allianz report about retirement in 2025. The first statistic I think is very telling, and my research is similar to this. 47% of Americans, which is nearly half, do not have any sort of written financial plan. Half of America That means they haven't had that conversation. What's really keeping Americans up at night? Hint, it's not death. 64% of Americans worry more about running out of money than death itself.
Yeah.
But that family conversation can go a really long way. And it was just another reminder. And unfortunately, I get these reminders a lot. But this one is really fresh in my mind. I just I wanted to bring it to the audience so that it does not happen to you.
And then maybe having, like, if you can, a Google Doc with shared passwords or something with a trusted person, your executor, whoever, having a binder. If something happens to me, I have that for my kids with my will. And then I'm starting to print out my latest statements from things and put them in there every month. And then I get rid of them, put the next ones in so I don't have to keep a ton of that. But
1 page of passwords and 30 minutes to 60 minutes a year can go a really long way.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to some questions now. Kim in Massachusetts.
I promise the next topic will be less
lighter.
It'll be our next topic coming up is a much lighter topic.
Okay, so Kim in Massachusetts says, I am still 6 years away from RMDs, but I always loved the security of my TSP and its protection from lawsuits or collections. I know there's no equivalent protection after RMDs occur, but is there a similar life cycle mutual fund that I can purchase post RMDs?
Kim, you're getting a couple things confused here. When you're talking about, there are great protections we have when it comes to retirement plans. Now, different states have slightly different rules, so I can't say this exactly for every state. I'm in the state of Georgia, but talk to folks all over the country. You're in Massachusetts, I believe. Kim is from Massachusetts. Yes. The rules, I think, in Mass are a little bit different as far as retirement accounts. But the TSP plan, the Thrift Savings Plan, is a government plan, and you're correct. That is almost the most ironclad protection about retirement assets. Whether it's, even if you're in bankruptcy, there's a huge amount of protection. If you're in any sort of civil lawsuits, huge amount of protection. I don't think there's anything that's ever 100% ironclad, but that's about the highest level you can get when it comes to protection from creditors. Just because you turn 73 and now you have RMDs, that does not take that away. That's a misnomer, because it's the vast majority of your money would still be in the thrift savings plan or a retirement plan. Now, it is true that the money that has to come out is no longer protected. So if your RMD is $20,000 this year and that goes into a cash account, then technically that's not protected, but it doesn't unprotect the entire corpus that still sits at TSP. Again, high protection if the money is in an IRA as well, but that's state by state. Now, moving and finding another life cycle type plan similar to what you would have, Kim, in the TSP, that's just another investment option. And there are plenty of investment companies that have those very similar options. Almost every big mutual fund company has a life cycle or target style fund that you can put those RMDs into if you choose to invest there. But the fund itself, the investment style itself, that doesn't give you the protection. The protection is that it is in a retirement account, particularly TSP.
Okay, Jason in Michigan says, I have two daughters, ages 14 and 13. In addition to their Michigan State Plan 529s, both have approximately $30K each. I have individual UTMA accounts set up for both of them as well, with approximately $8K each. Is the UTMA the best place for their money?
Jason in Michigan, I think UTMA is a really good place for having money for the kids. Usually your limit should be the annual gift limit, which is $19,000 per person. Above that, if you want to gift even more than that, then you'd have to file a gift tax return, and then that would come off of your lifetime exemption. But let's just call it $19,000 is an easy limit to think about. Secondly, remember that there's something called the kiddie tax, meaning that if they get over about, let's call it $2,600 a year in unearned income, it starts to be taxed at your rate. However, the kids are still young, early teenage years. This is a great way for them to be invested in a UTMA account. The one downside that, at least there's two small downsides. One, and they may not be downsides at all, is that in Michigan as an example, I think it's age 21, then that money automatically becomes theirs. And it's their money now and it's their account just by virtue of them turning age 21. I don't know if that's a little bit different from state to state, but a lot of states are age 21. Secondly, there is a little bit of a financial aid impact. If you look at FAFSA, FAFSA looks at that money at a UTMA account as their money. So it can sometimes make getting financial aid a little bit tougher. So just know that. And it's irrevocable. Once you put money into one of these UTMA accounts, it's you can't take that money back.
Can I ask you, what's the difference? It's a Universal Trust for Minors Act, and then there's a UGMA, Universal Gift for Minors account.
Krista, I think that they're virtually, I don't know that there's much difference between the two.
Okay.
They're just different names.
Got it.
And it could be state by state. Some have UGMA, some have UTMA.
Okay.
And again, other options to consider. 529 plan is another option. A Roth IRA for the kids, if they have any earned income, then you could contribute up to the maximum of either the Roth or how much money they've earned. And then, Jason, it's not the end of the world to have a brokerage account. Mm-hmm. And it's just a brokerage account in your name, and it's eventually going to be money for the kids, but they all have their nuances. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the UTMA account. Only real downside for some parents would say, hey, my kid's not a full adult at age 21, but that's up to you as a parent.
All right, Maria in Delaware says, I'm a 58-year-old single teacher planning to retire in 6 years. I currently have $1.2 million saved in a 403B Roth IRA and pension contributions, which I'll receive when I retire. My house is paid and I have no debt. The 403B...
Go Maria.
I know. The 403B is in a target retirement fund, and my Roth IRA is in a total stock market index. I'll receive a pension that will pay me approximately 75% of my salary in retirement. I do not have a financial planner. I live a pretty boring financial life, but I've recently come down with a case of FOMO, fear of missing out, for those who don't know. It seems like everyone...
FOMO for what?
It seems like everyone has a financial planner. Should I hire someone? I feel like I'm a decent saver, but maybe I can accomplish more, financially speaking, with the advice of a financial planner. And by the way, my accounts are with Vanguard, so Vanguard Personal Advisor Select could be an option. Thanks.
Have you ever heard of this? This is great. I love to hear this because I've never heard of someone having FOMO over not having a financial advisor. That's amazing.
I know.
It's probably the best FOMO story. Said FOMO. I thought usually it's about somebody being on a yacht or a cruise somewhere in the Caribbean and you're wishing you were in the Caribbean, but not a financial advisor. But this is great. And I think it's a virtue of your age, Maria. You're thinking you are getting close to 60. And in your 20s, very few people have an advisor. In your 30s, very few people have an advisor. I think people usually start really thinking about getting an advisor in their 40s, and then the percentage chance that you're going to have an advisor goes up as you age, because the amount of money you have saved gets to be a greater amount. There's more worry that comes with that. So this is a virtue of your life stage. You're looking around and you're saying, wow, A, I've got a lot of money, $1.2 million invested. I hope I'm doing that right. Two, I just pulled up a couple of charts. Half of America doesn't have a written plan. 64% of America is worried more about running out of money than death. So all of these things, the confluence of all of these variables are making you I don't think it's FOMO of not having an advisor. I think it's the fear of not having a clear plan and being worried about it and looking at your friends and saying, well, Mary's got a plan and she seems pretty locked in, as my kids would say, when it comes to her financial planning, and she's not worried about ever running out of money. That's where your FOMO's coming in. Not that you end up actually having a person, but the person that's the financial advisor is supposed to really dampen and take away a lot of that anxiety. So that's the FOMO, I think, coming in. And I'm a big believer. And Warren Buffett always says, if you ask a barber if you need a haircut, the answer is always yes. And I'm a financial advisor, so I believe in our industry. And I believe that the peace of mind a good fiduciary that can give to you and your family is absolutely invaluable for a really large percentage of people. Not everyone needs a financial advisor, but the percentage of folks who have financial advisors as asset levels go higher becomes increasingly higher. And you get the more money you have saved and the more complex your situation is, and I know you said yours is boring, but is it really that boring? It's all the money you have in the world. It's in a bunch of different accounts. Yes, you have a pension. So yes, I do think it's a pretty straightforward situation, but give it a try. And that's the other thing. You don't need to have a financial advisor for the rest of your life. But there's very little downside, particularly if you talk to the folks at Vanguard. They've got a program. See how you like that. See if that gives you the clarity that really you're looking for. You may not have an advisor there. It may be a rolling person and a place to call that they have your information. And you may not have an or a financial advisor. You may have a financial advisory team that changes. And if you think it's valuable and you want one person or one team to be consistent for a really long period of time, maybe then you go find another advisory team that would be more permanent. Either way, I think there's very little downside of giving it a shot.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, brand new rule of thumb to help us all reduce our anxiety, right?
Around
spending.
Opening your wallet and making a purchase that you might feel a little uncomfortable about. Welcome back to Ask an Advisor. Wes Moss, your host today, along with Krista DiBiase. How are we doing, Krista?
Doing great.
We're going into a brand new, fresh topic because I'm a sucker for rules of thumb.
I know. I can't wait to hear what this is. I only know the title of it.
Rule of thumb, the 4% rule, the 50-30-20 rule, the 25X rule, the 3 years of dry powder rule. These are all ways to make financial circumstances, the world of financial advice, to make it more simple. And I think there's great value in that. And that's why I think I've always loved rules of thumb. And they're easy to remember. So you boil everything down, and this rule of thumb can help you here, and this rule of thumb can help you there. Some are more important than others. I'd put this I wouldn't put this at the top of the stack as far as the one that's going to get you to a perfectly peaceful retirement. But I think it does apply to a lot of us. And here's the name of the rule, or here's how it works. And first of all, I guess I'll acknowledge that this is the Clark Howard audience. This is a Clark Smart audience. And we're about to talk about a rule that relates to opening up your wallet and spending. And the Clark audience, your audience, our audience, has been really good at not spending and is famous for being able to go without, be modest spenders, and then have great financial freedom because of it. So I'm not here advocating that you should be opening up your wallet, because for so many of us, it is the very act of being disciplined around not spending that has gotten us to where we want to be. But I think there's also a tipping point, and this is where the point one, here's the rule, the 0.01% rule comes in. And it's Nick Majuli, who is just wrote a book, and this is, I don't know if the whole book is about this or it's a big part of the book, but it talks about, evidently he heard Jay-Z, the famous rapper, I think at some point has been a billionaire, but this is many years ago. He heard Jay-Z say something like, "What's 50 grand to somebody like me?" Now, he said it in much more colorful language than that.
As Jay-Z does.
As Jay-Z might, but Nick started doing the math in his head and said, wait a minute, if this guy's worth 500 million, I think at the time, then 50 grand is only 0.01% of his net worth. So as crazy as that may sound to all of us, it may not be that big of a deal for him to sweat that much money. And this really goes back to allowing yourself to not sweat the small stuff when it comes to spending a little bit more in any given moment than you may have that you may want to spend. Is it an extra? Nick gives the author gives an example that he used the 0.01% rule to pay $80 extra that he normally wouldn't have wanted to do, so that he could choose his seats on a plane next to his wife. Who's going to argue with that? Right. But for him, it was, wait a minute, use the 0.01% rule, and it was $80 and it was okay. Now, here's where it comes from mathematically. So you take 0.01% of your total net worth. So if your total net worth is $500,000, that would mean your 0.01% number would be $50. So anything less than $50, maybe you shouldn't spend a lot of time sweating it. If your net worth is $1 million, it's $100. If it's a $10 million net worth, it's $1,000. If your net worth is $50 million, your 0.1%, your 0.01% rule would be $5,000. And the point he's making is that as opposed to spending a lot of time maybe to get a refund or spending a lot of energy around something that is under this nominal level, this number, then you maybe are spending too much time and too much mental energy thinking about it when it doesn't really impact you financially. And here's where the math comes in, is that he's using a really conservative rate of return on your overall net worth, 4% total growth. If you divide 4% by 365, what are you going to get? You're going to get about 0.01%. So the assumption is that your overall assets, and this is house and this is net worth and accounts, should be growing conservatively, really conservatively at 4% a year, and that's where he comes up with this number. So I think it's an interesting way to think about spending in any given situation. Do I upgrade this? Do I get an extra dish at a restaurant? The Clark Smart audience may say, well, I didn't get 1,000 dishes and that's why I have money. And I don't disagree with that at all. But at a certain point, when you have financial comfort, you don't want to spend, if you have a $5 million net worth, are you really going to spend 3 hours trying to get a refund that is $150 and it's going to take you 3 hours? Well,
I know somebody who would.
There are a lot of people that would. What this rule of thumb is saying is don't sweat that. Your time is more valuable. And I'll leave it up to the Clark audience to decide if they like the rule of thumb or not.
Okay. All right. Let's go to
Not
questions.
my rule of thumb.
Yep. Amy in Arkansas says, I'd like to hear your thoughts about adjusting the 4% rule to more, possibly 5%, if the primary residence is paid for. I understand it's not income producing and not liquid, but I never hear it factored in at all. At some point, it would be liquid or become available. Wouldn't it be insurance against running out of money? If I take 5% at 60 or 65, but also have a paid-for home worth $650,000, shouldn't I sleep better at night with the higher withdrawal percentage? I just never hear it discussed.
Amy, I think I discussed this because so first of all, you're trying to extend the 4% rule a little bit. And because the house is paid off, and I totally get that. If you're looking at the ingredients of a happy retiree or someone who is in the retire sooner, let's call it jet stream, you both want to use the 4% rule. I call it 4% plus, so I'm not saying no at this point to the 5, but it also includes a paid off house because you're always going to need a place to live. You always need it. And even if it's going to be years out into the future that you can use the equity, everything gets more expensive. So your $650,000 house today may be worth $750,000 in the future, but it still may take now $750,000 to live in a similar situation. So I like being able to do both, having ultimately a paid off house and using the 4% plus rule. However, William Bengen, the godfather of this rule, recently just wrote a book that said it should be 4.7%. He calls that the max safe rate. So it's really a range, Amy. And for you pushing it to 5, is that dangerous over time? The answer is not really. If you do the math, if you're sticking to 4%, you've got a 99% chance money doesn't run out or at least 30 years. If you push it to 5% historically and mathematically with a 70% stock, 30% bond allocation, it still works for 30 years, 84% of the time. So it's not irresponsible to think that you can do 5. Just know that, of course, there's a higher percentage chance that money runs out at the end of that long period of time. So just know that. I would say that doing 5% without a paid off house would be tougher. The fact that you do have a paid off house, it makes you a better candidate to be able to do that. But my fundamentals, and let's call these are the conservative happy retiree rules of thumb, paid off house and 4% plus rule, both together at the same time.
Okay, this came in from Alex in Georgia. Question for Wes, because I don't want to give Clark a heart attack.
What are you asking, Alex?
Wes, who would you recommend the buy, borrow, and die strategy for? I'm 63, retired. My spouse, age 55, is retiring next year with no children and our house is paid for. I'm starting this strategy with 5% of my liquid net worth to supplement my income with tax-free money. This will provide me with an additional $30K the first few years, maybe more later. I may pay the loan off slowly after 10 years of staying under the capital gains threshold. I have a Roth account that I want to grow over the next 10 years before withdrawing any funds.
But we don't know where Alex is getting the loan from, though.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
We don't know where he's getting the loan. I would suspect, well, it's probably two places, either on a piece of real estate that's paid for, or his portfolio, which would be in the form of a margin loan. So right out of the gate, Alex, buy, borrow, die strategy. That's pretty much what all of us do with in the cycle of our finances. We buy things, we borrow money, and then we die. So the buy, borrow, die strategy, I don't think it would give Clark a heart attack, because that's kind of the way the world does work over time. The reason you're looking at it as an actual strategy is that you're being intentional about it, and you're saying, well, if everything's paid for today, then why not take 5% of the value as a loan so that I don't have to pay capital gain tax? It happens all the time. That's a really smart way to do it. And then when you die, then the money gets owed back, but you haven't had to pay taxes on it. So it's a way this goes back to tax efficiency, tax strategy, and taking a loan out so that you don't have to pay taxes on selling something. That can make a lot of sense. What are the taxes to sell something? Well, they could be 20%. They could be 15, 20, 25%, depending on your income. What's it cost to take a loan? 6%? 7%? So you're doing the arbitrage. You're saying, well, this makes more sense. Now, you do that every year. And I think that if you're looking at an overall net worth of $1 million and you're only having $50,000 borrowed, then that's a low amount of leverage. And I think that can work really well. Where we run into trouble is that if we get overly leveraged, borrowing too much on the paid for assets, and the assets go down in value, then you get a margin crunch, and then you can really quickly compound your overall losses. So you need to do it if you're going to do this, it should be on a very diversified portfolio, not a particular stock, and a piece of real estate or multiple pieces of real estate that should be set up well fundamentally, so that you're not worried about the value cratering of that. Because if your value craters on equities or a portfolio or real estate, then the percentage of your leverage, if it's 50,000 or 100,000, automatically goes up. And you've got to be careful about that. But you're also taking advantage just naturally here, if you think of it this way, is that your heirs should be getting a step up in basis. So it's very common practice for folks to say, well, gosh, I'm in my 80s or 90s. I don't want to be selling this stock now, because then I'm just paying taxes on it, when really, if I wait longer and I pass away and give it to my heirs, they get a step up in basis and essentially avoid those taxes. And there's great debate about these tax rules, but that's the way it's been for as long as I can remember, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So you're just using the natural rules of the tax code and life, and I don't think it's crazy. Just watch your leverage amount.
Okay. Greg in Florida wrote in with this one. I have $500K in a traditional TSP, and over the last few years have been Roth converting to get the value down before RMD starts. I have been moving money to Vanguard index funds. The TSP now has an in-plan conversion option in 2026. Expense ratios for the TSP funds range from 0.04 to 0.09. Vanguard can be had for similarly low costs. Is there a case to be made for staying in the TSP for Roth conversions? What are the factors that make a 401k TSP better or worse? Thanks for all you both do. I catch most of your podcasts via YouTube. You guys play well off each other. Thank you. That's nice.
I'm glad that's nice of him to say that. This is Greg. Greg, the TSP and Vanguard are they're cousins when it comes to investing. If you really think about how Vanguard started, it was just really simple. U.S. equity fund, then a total stock market fund, then a total bond market fund. Now, they evolved a lot over time, and there's a lot of other choices now. But TSP was very similar, and Vanguard were very similar as far as investment options are concerned. But TSP hasn't innovated and created new products. They still have, unless I have missed this. CSIFG, common stock, small cap, international. Those are just 3 indices. Very much like what you would find at a Vanguard for those particular indices. And then fixed income, which is a total bond market index. And then G, that was for F. G is just the total bond market, which would be government and corporate bonds. And that's it. They make it really simple. And it's 5 super low cost index funds. And you can choose the ones you want, or you can use their life cycle funds and they'll choose the mix for you. No, if you're wanting to keep super low cost, keep things really simple, and you're fine with those indices, which by the way can work really well for a lot of people for a long, long time. Then if you're now getting that option to be able to do the conversion within TSP, I think it's totally. I think that sounds like a yes to me. Mm-hmm. When you ask what's the advantage of now in rolling it to an IRA and doing this in a place like Vanguard, if the costs are similar, it would just the advantage. The only advantage I can think of is choice. TSP still just has those 5 funds. That's it, but they really cover a huge part of the world. Vanguard has, I don't know how many they have, but I would say hundreds of different options. They have ETFs. They have index funds, they have that are passive, they have active mutual funds, they have balanced mutual funds, they have target mutual funds. So it's just a matter of maybe more choice if you go to a place like that. But having the 5 broad indices that cover most of the world, that's a really good place to start. So if you like TSP and you're comfortable with it, I don't see any reason why not to stay.
Great. Well, that does it for today's episode of Ask an Advisor. Yes, for sure. We'll be back next week. The Clarkster back tomorrow. And
send us more questions.
Yeah, go to clark.com/ask. And you can indicate if you want the question to be responded to by Clark or Wes on there. So thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing with a friend. And I hope you subscribe to our daily newsletter as well at clark.com/newsletter. Have a great day.